Approve.
I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the agenda, all right. Minutes of the previous meeting. Has everyone reviewed the minutes from the previous meeting? Are there any changes? If not, call for a motion.
I move we approve.
Second.
Favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved from the previous meeting. Report from the code officer. I think, is Stephen going to do that?
That would be me.
Okay.
I have nothing to report tonight,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, if none, there are no old agenda items, so we will move on to the first item. That's amendment number 1 to the, let's see, sorry. Conditional use 4451 1110 North Broad Street. That's the first item of business, so who's here to speak in favor of that? Come to the
We'll give a
microphone, please.
presentation first, though.
We're going to do
We're
the
gonna
staff presentation first,
Oh,
and then the app.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Stephen, excuse me. All right.
No worries.
Sorry about that, Eric.
Stealing my thunder here. All right. My name is Stephen Jaques, Senior Planner here with the City of Monroe. Here to deliver the staff report presentation recommendation here. So this property is actually going to be the subject of 3 separate zoning actions tonight. 3 cases. We have 4451, which is a conditional use specifically for the fuel pumps. We'll have 4502, which is a hardship variance on pavement depth. And then finally, we'll take a look at the certificate of appropriateness, case 4452. So I'm going to present all 3 of them, and then we're going to hear from the applicant, discuss it, and then take 3 separate votes at the end. And we'll have a couple other cases that are also bundled like that throughout the rest of the agenda, and so we'll handle it with presenting all of them, hearing from the applicant, discussing, and then voting individually on the motions. All right, so starting here, I gave the game away there with the Quick Trip. The applicant here is proposing to build a Quick Trip gas station here at 1110 North Broad. The larger parcel out here is 15 acres, but the subject area, this area right in here, is about 2 acres, and that's where we would have this conditional use. Property is already zoned B3, as you can see in the corner up here. So are the surrounding properties. And as you can see on the aerial right here, it is largely wooded and undeveloped at this point, and so are some of the neighboring properties. To the south there, you can see a Bojangles and a mini storage, and that intersection there is Charlotte Rowell and North Broad. Prominent intersection. Site plan is up here as well. Although we might call it a gas station, the code calls it a convenience store with fuel pumps. And the reason that matters is because our zoning ordinance allows convenience stores by right. They would not need any extra approvals here. If they were just building the convenience store, we wouldn't even have this case. What's triggering this case is that fuel pumps are considered an accessory use. And so in this case, they're proposing a 14-pump fuel canopy, and they need the conditional use specifically for that. Staff's analysis deems that this use is compatible with the area. This is a prominent intersection on a major roadway near the highway, and in an area that's slated to get more growth in future years and maybe decades to come based on our comp plan. So this site makes a lot of sense for a convenience store gas station. However, there are some issues with the site plan. And I'll get into these in coming slides here, but we have the access drives create safety hazards and a conflict with the existing easement that's out there. There's some stormwater issues that we're concerned about, and there are some site plan revisions that would need to be made to comply with the ordinance. So first we'll talk about the access drive, color-coded it here. So this is the main drive here that comes out to an intersection with a signal at Charlotte Rowell and North Broad. That purple area on here is a legal access easement that was set up when the Bojangles was built to provide access to both the Bojangles and future development on that area. You can see that that spot right here, which is slated for the access drive, does not align with the two proposed access drives on the site. So that would need to be remedied because that is a legal issue that needs to be respected. It would also remedy one of the issues that we've identified, which is that this drive would put too many cars trying to enter and exit and stack at that light, and it would interfere with the function of that intersection. Also, the way they're aligned would create conflict points between the folks entering this site and entering the Bojangles site. So the current alignment really doesn't work very well. This is an alignment that would be in compliance with the easement, but would also solve some of the other issues, the code compliance issues, putting the fuel pump to the side, bringing the building up towards the street. We would also need to address lot coverage, how much impervious surface is out there, and how much parking they have, both of which exceed what's allowable right now. Alternatively, we could do something even more ideal in this case, which would bring that building into the corner and set it up for a direct pedestrian connection to the building itself, which would provide a safer, more multimodal access version of this project, while still allowing the movement of automobiles and safe viewing of the site, management of the site. So we recommend, as a staff, approval of the conditional use, subject to some conditions. I'm not going to read them all out here. They are in your staff report. But to summarize, the condition number 1 would say that the driveway issue needs to be resolved. Condition number 2 and 3 have to do with revising the plan to comply with the zoning ordinance. Okay, moving along to the hardship variance on the same property, same project. This is specifically to allow the fuel pump island to be in the front yard, which our code does not allow. We circled it here for reference. So in order to support a hardship variance, which is essentially saying that there's something unique about the property that prevents the applicant from complying with the ordinance, they can't comply. You would have to find that there is some kind of extraordinary circumstance on the property due to topography or terrain or how the site is laid out. In this case, we don't find that there are any extraordinary circumstances. This is an undeveloped site. It is relatively flat. It is relatively easy to develop. And this is also a new use. Sometimes when you have a use that was in effect before the code and you come in and you want to change it, then you end up running into conflicts with the code. So you have this, quote, grandfathered use, and then you would have to navigate around that. In this case, we have a new use. It's solely the applicant's design choice that's creating the issue here. We don't really find that there's a hardship that's compelling them not to follow our ordinance. In their report, they do make a claim that this would interfere with safely running the site, that not allowing this variance would create a safety risk. Staff did not find evidence to support that. They claim that being next to woods could interfere with safety. We didn't find that. We didn't find supporting evidence for that. We've also seen Quick Trips around the state that have complied with. They've laid their site out similar to the way that we've suggested, and they seem to be up and operating no problem. If anything, there is a traffic safety risk based on this current layout, as we already talked about with the stacking of cars at the intersection, the conflicts between the cars coming in and out, and the lack of a good pedestrian connection between the street and the building. And then we would also say that granting this variance would confer a special treatment on this particular project, and that it is also inconsistent with the ordinance intent. So again, the easement for reference, as well as this would help solve the hardship by putting the fuel pump on the site, It would also solve some of the other code compliance issues that are mentioned in the previous report. So it solves a lot of issues. With that said, we have to recommend denial on the hardship variance as staff. And then we'll move on to the final case here, which is the corridor design overlay certificate of appropriateness. Again, same site. This would be just allow the convenience store with fuel pumps as long as it complies with the corridor design overlay. In this case, we have to evaluate the architecture to make sure that the design of the building meets ordinance. We assess that it does. Like I said previously, we support the use, although we note that there are some design alterations that need to happen. Again, the conditional use, the issues with the conditional use are also issues largely with the certificate of appropriateness, so I'm not going to rehash all of those, just to say that both of those impact both of these cases. The access drive, the stormwater plan. I'll go over that real quickly. So off to the left here, we have a plan for a stormwater pond that would manage some of the stormwater off of this larger 15-acre site as it develops. But we noted that the outlet drains that water directly into somebody's backyard on Louise Drive. And that seems like that could be problematic. That could be flooding a residence. And so we would want to see some clarification and maybe some redesign to make sure that we're not flooding out our neighbors on the street next door. Then again, for reference. So the COA technically has to be tabled. We will have to wait for mayor and council action on the hardship variance and the conditional use, and then it will come back to you at the next planning commission meeting for your decision. The recommended condition can be taken up at that time. That concludes the staff report.
So is this the time for someone to speak on this project to come forward, please?
Thank you. Again, I'm Eric Eberhardt. I'm an attorney representing Quick Trip with regard to their plan and this process. Present tonight on behalf of Quick Trip is also Brian Mora, who's seated behind me. He'd be the project manager. In addition to that is a representative of the current property owner, and that's Nathan Purvis, who's seated in the front row. As I stand here, I do so with sort of mixed emotions. Quick Trip would be a great partner for the city of Monroe. And this location is a great location for Quick Trip to partner with the city of Monroe. But just being direct and to the point, Quick Trip's not going to be in a position to adjust their site plan to accommodate what the planning department believes needs to happen here. They just won't move forward on this project, and there's some pretty significant reasons. First, though, let me just say we recognize that what we're asking is not in direct compliance with the ordinances, particularly the note regarding the corridor design overlay and the location of the proposed pumps or canopies for the pumps. We know that's the case. Would note for your purposes that were we not in the corridor design overlay, it would not be an issue. They are allowed for B3 properties. That's not been mentioned, but that is the case, at least as I interpret your ordinances. So our primary concern there seems to be that we are in that corridor design overlay. That being said, we are also on the very edge of that corridor design overlay. And that's why we believe and submit to the city and first to you guys as the planning commission, that this should be something that you should consider granting a variance on and allowing the project to move forward. Where we have some concerns, and it's not just concerns, it's gonna kill the project, is with the suggestion of putting the pumps on the side, or the canopies on the side of the building. You've got in your packet, and we hadn't seen exactly, we'd heard from the city, we hadn't seen exactly what they were talking about, but there's an image that they have included to suggest that there's an alternative that would work for this project, and that they've seen other locations where the canopies were on the side of the building. There is a very, very significant distinction to be drawn. And that's that in those situations, there's more road frontage. There's more activity and access. In this case, as you guys are fully aware, it's Highway 11, and that's it. The easement is an access easement. It's a drive. It's not a road. It doesn't go anywhere but enter into businesses. It's not the type of situation that Quick Trip has been comfortable or ever proceeded in moving the location of their canopy. And it has to do with safety. And I understand that planning disagrees with us, but we would ask you to consider what we're saying. To move these canopies to the side reduces the direct sight line of all the pumps. And what I mean by that, not every single one, but it reduces the visibility such that the employees would not have direct sight line from their stations to what's occurring at multiple pumps under the canopy. Quick Trip does not consider that to be something that is safe for their employees or their customers, in the vein of not having more roadway visibility for what's going on. In other words, it's either going to be the employees seeing what's going on right now or nobody. And that's just not something that they see as a feasible alternative. Now, with regard to the other items that have come up, candidly, we really just got access to some of that yesterday. And I understand the planning department has been overwhelmed with this particular agenda, but we're still trying to identify what would be workable and what's not, and we're certainly prepared to do everything we can to work with Monroe and your officials concerning the other items. But the primary thing comes back to if it's going to be a requirement that we move the canopies, then the project's probably not going to move forward. And that's just an honest statement, so you know. So we are asking that you approve the hardship variance. We're asking that you approve the conditional use. And then, of course, we would be asking at the appropriate time for you to grant the certificate of appropriateness. I will answer any questions that I can. That is essentially our presentation, is that we believe that we've got a very viable plan that would serve this community very well, but we need some help on the items that we've asked for variance on.
All right. Questions? Staff?
Are y'all willing to move the entrances into QT, since that the traffic is going to be an issue?
That's a conversation, well, we may have a different perspective on whether it's going to be an actual issue to traffic, but that's a conversation that we can have. We just haven't seen what's been suggested until such a short time prior to this meeting that we haven't really been able to process what adjustments we would be able to make. But the major issue for the moment is the layout of the location, and I figure we can find ways to.
I just can't say an approval or a denial until I know if you're willing to do something to fix the traffic issue. So,
If I may, I have a question then, since they've not seen this layout, and what I've heard is that, since Eric had pointed this out, if I may, try to get back to one of these slides that had where the heck is this preferred layout? Give me a minute here, find out where we are in this slideshow here. There's a host of slides here. So what I'm hearing is that you guys obviously have not had a chance to look at this. So from what I taken notes, the direct sight line of pumps. Well, this particular plan that you have not had an opportunity to look at, which I do admit, this shows the store cornered with the store facing the pumps. Just FYI, that's what we're showing
Well-
here. So that, you haven't had an opportunity to analyze this plan, and I do admit that.
So the concern there is we would have sight line for the pumps that are to the left side of the middle of the canopies. We're not going to have sight lines from where employees are stationed to anything that's on what I would say, just from looking at would be a northeastern perspective. So we're going to lose three to four pump of visibility.
And then you could shift the building up. I mean, I just stuck that on the plan just in a haphazard fashion. The building can still be moved up towards that other driveway there and still meet our code. And centered up with the pumps almost a little bit more. This is just one of our rendered plans. I mean, I'm not an artist, so you have to forgive me. This was something I'd put together. But the building and the pumps could still be lined up with the bottom of the building, lined up with the bottom of the pumps, and almost be centered up with the pumps. And you guys still have not had an opportunity to look at this plan, but I don't know how that could not be centered up with the pump island and not meet our code. Just B3, so you're looking at right off the top of my head, I don't know. I think it's 20 in the front. Well, you have a corridor design overlay district, 75-foot max. So that's gonna push the building. At least, this building could be pushed back further from where you're looking at right now. That corner right there, that's at the 25, 30-foot mark, basically. So this building could be pushed back further into the site and meet our code.
Would you like a pointer?
I would prefer that, but you could push this building back even further up into the site to meet our code.
Would you like the pointer?
The concern there would be to get the visibility that would be conflicting with the access that you're pointing out.
And again, this is Brian Mora. He is the project
Manager
manager.
from
Would have
Quick Trip.
much more understanding of what movements.
And before I start pointing at all sorts of things on there, I will go ahead and emphasize the fact that we have, in certain municipalities, had our canopies on the side. We're not trying to say that that's not something that we do. It has to do with that visibility and the safety for the citizens of Monroe that would be stopping at this location. Since the only traffic that we have is, of course, right there along the main roadway that's down here, people that are pumping over in these locations, say MPPs 1 and 2, would feel completely safe, completely confident, but the staff would only have visibility to, say, pumps 3, 2, and 1 down here, and then 4 through 7 that are up there. We wouldn't have as much visibility. Now, if we start moving the building back this way, then of course we're going to have conflicts with this access point over here, if that's something that the city is adamant about. So it's not that we can't look at these things. We're more than happy to. And same thing when it comes to traffic in general. We're more than happy to do a full-fledged TIS on the site to see what would be the most advantageous way to go ahead and coordinate. But to Eric's point from earlier, since this is so new to us in terms of this type of rearrangement, that's not something we've had a chance to consider yet.
Can I ask a question? the store that's in the staff report has the building facing the roadway, and they don't face any of the pumps.
Oh, I know what you're saying. He's basically, instead of the building being vertical like this, the building is facing this way over.
Yeah, the cashiers are face the front roadway, and they don't face the pumps.
But it's also not the only roadway that's down here, because there are.
But what was stated in the presentation was they need direct sight line of the pumps.
Direct sightline to the pumps because there's no development here. The fact that all of this is wooded,
Well, this is gonna be built, and the owner sitting behind you fully intends to develop this property behind it. So, I mean, you have a road proposed behind it. That's what I think is being proposed on the plan, is there's future development beyond this. So when we say it's wooded, this isn't like Alaska. So this is, I mean, this is fully planned to be developed behind it. This is a temporary in nature situation. So the wooded situation that we're dealing with here is completely temporary in nature. This
We
is
don't
not
know
a
how
permanent
long,
situation.
Brad.
it's still one that exists.
So, I mean, you're asking for a permanent situation to your site when we're dealing with a temporary situation that's surrounding you. You have a proposed road around you when you literally are proposing to clear a lot next to you for future development. So this will not always be wooded next to you.
We're not making the claim that it would always
Yeah,
be.
I'm
Our
not-
concern is the safety of our customers, regardless of when they're going to be coming to our
I
site.
mean, is the safety that you will not have something beyond your customers, will there be other things around your customers, is what I'm hearing you say, so I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yes.
Okay.
For clarification purposes, that's what we're looking for. Now, in a perfect world, we'd want both. But in terms of being able to make concessions, we'd need at least one of those things for the safety of our customers. That's one of those things we put in high priority. We know a lot of other competitors out there don't necessarily look at those things when they're looking to their development. And that is, of course, their own prerogative. There's no judgment there. But safety is one of those things that Quick Trip prides itself on quite a bit. The lighting of our site is very strategic. The security camera setup is very strategic. We look for the safety of our customers above all else. No problem.
Further questions?
And there's nothing you can do as far as rearranging the interior of the store to increase visibility?
I mean, there are always things that you can do, but it's not consistent with what has been successful for security purposes before. I mean, we could glass the whole thing, but that's just not a realistic construction plan. It's really the visibility for the employees from their station out that would be important.
Any further comments?
I just don't feel like they've had enough opportunity to see, or if they're willing, to look at another option, because it doesn't work with our city code. And I think what the
Should this be-
attorney is saying is you haven't had an opportunity to review this in a different light, so.
Should this be tabled? Until everyone has viewed what's going on? My main concern is the traffic on that road. That first entrance in, I don't like that first entrance. So that would need to be eliminated. Yes.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but if I may be heard, we would not ask to have this table. We would ask for you to go ahead and make a decision, and then we can address things at the next level if we need to.
But it can't be addressed until we have seen the plans and agree upon the plans.
We've submitted the plans,
But we're not agreeing upon those plans, is what I'm saying.
then I think you deny it.
Do we have a motion?
I don't-
There's an unwillingness to compromise.
Just to be clear with you guys, what we presented to you in the staff, it was meant, described to you in the staff report, so we just illustrated what was described to you. We're not proposing a new design or new plan. Those things were described in the staff report as alternatives, in black and white text. We weren't trying to do a new design for them this evening, just to be clear about that. We were specifically in our descriptions in the report about there were alternatives that could be done to meet the requirements of our code. And we just illustrated that to you this evening. I just wanted to be clear about that. We weren't trying to redesign their project for them.
Just giving different options.
Yeah, we were trying to illustrate what we had what we were describing in our reports when we gave you our staff reports. Now, they saw these illustrations this evening as well. This was basically an illustration of what could be done based on what we had described and recommended in our reports that could be done to meet our code. This is what it looks like based on what we had written in our report.
Understand.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no dimensions on these things. They're just graphics.
Right.
And they're unwilling to even look at another proposal, so I think that's the.
That's what I heard. You guys have to make a decision.
I move we deny.
Please speak into the microphone.
Yeah,
guys.
I'm having trouble hearing y'all.
I move we deny.
Wait, no, hold on, Randy. You need to start with the conditional use and then do the variance, and then you're gonna not take action on the COA. You're starting with the conditional use first.
We need to vote on the motion, is that correct?
Yeah, you need to start with the conditional use first, take motions on the conditional use first, and then the hardship variance.
Call the question? Deny, right?
So, yeah, you're calling for a motion on the conditional use first.
Well, we need, we have a motion, we have a second for the motion.
Yes.
You have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm gonna
Aye.
people up.
Motion carried. Okay. All right,
Was that for the conditional use or for the variance, guys?
yes.
And I have Rosalind as the motion and Kim as the second.
Now you gotta vote on the variance, guys. You got a motion and a variance, motion and a action for the variance.
All right, regarding the variance, I move we deny that too.
Second.
Favor? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
The motion carries, okay.
And then you're not taking action on the COA this evening. You're gonna need to vote on that one to table it.
Well, we're not gonna vote on the COA,
Yeah, you're not, you discussed only this evening, but you do have to vote to table it till the next planning commission meeting.
we need a motion to
Vote till May.
table the vote. for the
Motion to table.
COA, okay.
Second?
Second, favor, aye.
Aye.
All right. Is that it?
It's okay. You can leave it up there.
That's fine.
There'll be other folks.
Thank you.
I am recusing myself for the second agenda.
All right. Next item is 4315 Mill Village Cottage Court. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So this is a preliminary plat application for the property at 525 South Madison Avenue. It is approximately 0.37 acres, and the applicant is proposing to subdivide it from one property and turn it into 6 lots. Those 6 lots would be broken down into 5 residential lots and then 1 live-work lot on the corner here. So the live-work lot would be here, and then residential lots right there. There would also be a private alley with an access easement on the back here. So this property comes at the corner of South Madison and Knight. So the buildings will front onto Knight or South Madison, and then you'll access them with your vehicle via this easement to the rear. And we would note that this enables some infill development that is encouraged by our character code, and so it's an exciting opportunity to get some more development that is in the spirit of our new character code and to improve the neighborhood. So we are recommending approval of the preliminary plat.
Very well. Is someone here to speak in favor of this proposal?
Hey, that's me. I'm Clayton Matthias. Came up with this. Just wanted to note that it is actually 3 lots, 305 and 309 Knight Street are also incorporated in that. Yeah, we're excited to take advantage of the new code and help encourage infill building as well as hopefully some affordable housing.
Questions? Motion to approve? Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I motion to approve.
Who's second? Okay, I need y'all to speak in the microphone, please.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, item number 6, regulating plan amendment number 4554308 West Highland Avenue. Anyone here to speak for that?
Staff report. We'll do the staff report first. Yeah. All right, staff report here for 308 West Highland Avenue. I'll note again, this has 2 cases associated with it, and we'll need to go through the regulating plan amendment first and then cover the special exception variance. All right, so the regulating plan amendment, which in our character code area is equivalent to a rezone, is being asked on this property here at 308 West Highland Avenue, not very far from this building. It is on approximately 0.457 acres. The request is to reclassify the property from Character District 4, Neighborhood Center, to Character District 3, Neighborhood, for the purpose of constructing one single-family detached house as shown on the site plan here. So we've got West Highland Avenue right here. The lot would be accessed there. It is currently vacant, and it is zoned or designated CD4, which you can see the properties to the side and across the street are all CD4, but the properties behind it are CD3. So we're right here on the border between CD4 and CD3. If you look at it on an aerial or you drive by, you'll note that it's vacant. There used to be, I think, a tennis court on here, and there's some paved drive area here, but there's no house, and there's no activity happening here now. It is in the middle of multiple other single-family residences in the area. So the first thing to note is that a single-family house can be built by right in both of these zones, subject to certain qualifications. So the issue here is not whether you can build that house, it's the other finer points of the character district. So CD4 is kind of the midway point between our CD3 district and our CD5. So CD5 is covering downtown. It's our most intense district. That's where we put more of the growth, more of the intensity, bigger buildings, more uses. And then CD3 is a residential zone. It is for 1 and 2 family houses, so single family houses, duplexes. It's almost exclusively for residential. And then CD4 is kind of the halfway point between CD5 and CD3. It allows small scale commercial, small scale multifamily, single family, and the only real difference is the scale. So the applicant is requesting to reclassify to CD3 because that helps them avoid a variance for minimum lot build-out frontage. I'll explain that. So with CD4, for example, if you had a 50-foot lot, let's say you had a 50-foot lot, there would be a percentage of the building that has to be wide enough to fill that 50-foot lot. So in CD4, it's what, 60%? I believe 60%, so it would be 30 feet of that frontage has to have a building face on it. In CD3, that number drops to 40%, so in this case, you would have 20 feet of frontage. So this lot is really wide, and it makes it hard to build one house wide enough to comply with that frontage requirement, which is why they're asking to drop down to CD3. This is technically a deviation from the comp plan, because the comp plan and the zone and the character district call for some increased growth in this area. And so we would be dropping the intensity of allowable growth by switching to CD3. But it is compatible with the character. Like I said up here, you can see it's right on the border. So you can argue really CD3 or CD4 could be appropriate here. And the character, regardless, is single family. So what they're proposing to construct is really compatible either way. The proposal does require a variance on the maximum lot width, which we'll get to in just a minute. They also have submitted drawings for what this house would look like. This is the front. They had to show that they would comply with the character code. As far as we can tell, this is largely compliant. That would be verified in plans review. These are, you can see the side here. We have our garage off to the side, accessed on the back, and then this is the back of the house right here. So we're recommending approval as submitted, and then we will move on to the variance. So on the same property, we're getting a request for a special exception variance, and the special exception variance is more of the, there's certain regulations within the code that are eligible for a special exception variance, which is more of we don't want to versus we can't as far as compliance goes. That hardship is really we can't, the property is preventing us or the condition is preventing us. The special exception is more of a we would rather not. And then the assessment is more of a public, weighing the public good. Is the public good served by granting the variance or not? So in this case, we have a frontage. In CD3, you can only have a maximum lot width of 100 feet. And out here, we have 132 feet. So that's what I've highlighted here for you. So ordinarily, that would require you to split the property at least into 2 lots. They would like to keep it as 1 lot for 1 house. 3,900 square foot house, just under half an acre. We find that granting this variance would not impair or injure or create any problems for adjacent properties. It would not be out of character. However, our main issue with it is that it would be a missed opportunity for a second lot, a second home, a second household that gets to live in one of our desirable neighborhoods, close to downtown, close to all the kinds of things that you would want to be close to as far as your daily destinations, schools, workplaces, entertainment, you know, all that good stuff. So really the issue here is that there would be this missed opportunity. The reason that the code has that maximum lot width is because we want to encourage more houses per foot of infrastructure, because that's that saves us money as a city. When you've got 132 feet out there, that's a lot of pipe, that's a lot of asphalt, that's only being supported by the tax base of 1 house. If you split that into 2 lots, for example, now you've got 2 households paying for that same amount of asphalt and pipe and infrastructure. And so it's more efficient for the city. It helps us stay sustainable from a financial perspective, and it's ultimately a better deal for the taxpayers. It also allows another household the opportunity to live close to a lot of different things. So that's the main issue here. But if you were to grant this, our conclusion on here is that this would not be a substantial detriment to the public good on a small scale. So we would recommend approval as submitted.
Someone here to speak in for this proposal?
My name's Ned Butler, representing Reliant Homes. As I stated, we just want to build on the lot the way it is. We think we can build a larger house that fits more in the character of the other homes that are already located on Highland Avenue. The only hardship I would really say is if we went narrower to try to fit two houses on here, the slope at the front of this lot is probably 6 to 8 feet, which would make it difficult to get a second driveway in. So then we'd be using the existing driveway and wrapping around with an easement, which would make that house, those houses even smaller in the back, trying to make all that room for easement in the back. So again, we just feel we can build something that fits more in line with the houses that are already located on the island with this request.
Questions?
No.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on this proposal? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Aye.
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 All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right.
Yep, you have to also vote on the variance.
Now we're voting on the variance.
Variance, right, correct.
Motion to approve the variance.
In a second? In a second? All in favor? Aye.
Second.
Carries. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Going on now to Spring,
Spring Street case.
Spring Street?
Mhm.
Right. All right, next is rezone 4547, 1035 East Spring Street.
All right. So up here, we're going to consider 6 different requests as part of this project at 1025 and 1035 East Spring Street. So again, I'm going to run through all of the requests. We'll hear from the applicant. We can discuss all of them, and then you will have 6 different votes at the end. Okay, so the first item is considering the rezone of the property at 1035 East Spring Street. That is highlighted here for you. It is 3.34 acres. It is currently zoned R1, as you can see in the top corner, which is our large lot residential district. And they want to rezone it to B2, which is our general commercial, and that would match it with the existing church property at 1025 Spring Street. See, this property was wooded. It had 2 homes on it at one point. Those have since been demolished. And the proposal here is for a surface parking lot on the property as part of the church expansion project. So we note that this is being sought because it would help enable the church to expand. They're looking to add a life center on the property here, and they're also growing in their congregation, so they're looking to expand their parking. Matching this zoning B2 to B2 would enable the church expansion to proceed more smoothly. As you can see, it is a isolated residential parcel. It doesn't really fit with the existing zoning around there, which is all business zoning, and it's probably not going to be developed as R1 residential anytime soon or ever. So it makes sense to align it with the business zoning, to align it with the rest of the church property, and that actually brings it into greater alignment with our comp plan and with our zoning map. So it's a little bit of an oddball, and this is an opportunity to bring it into greater alignment with city's plans and codes. That said, a 169 space surface parking lot is probably not the optimal use of property as a general rule. Too much parking can be bad for cities because it dilutes the tax base. It can be aesthetically repelling. It increases the urban heat island effect, and it increases stormwater effect. So the idea is that you would want to have just enough parking and not necessarily too much, because we know we need parking, right? So in order to do that on this site, churches are in a unique space because they need all this parking and they need all this space largely on Sunday mornings. And then for the 6.5 days of the rest of the week, it's largely empty. So that's tricky to figure out how do we get the right amount of parking out there. So in this case, it does make some sense to add some parking, but we would recommend that the church do its best to make the best use of that parking. So we recommend that families travel together on Sundays, that they would share their parking lot with adjacent businesses who may need parking when it's not Sunday morning, to open their space to various civic groups and other folks who may want to meet in the property and could use it. So that would help offset some of the land that's being devoted to the parking lot. We also note that B2 zoning technically does not allow a surface parking lot on its own. It has to be attached to a building or a principal use of the property. And so they would need to recombine this property with the 1025 parcel in order to technically meet the code. But I think this is something they plan on doing regardless. So we're recommending approval of the rezone with some conditions here. The first one is that that parcel be recombined. There's also another one that talks about no accessory buildings in the front yard. And then we're going to get into this in a little bit with some of the other cases, but there's some plantings and some buffering that we would like to see, that we would recommend. This property here, as you can see in this aerial, was largely wooded, and that has since been all cleared. We would argue a little bit excessively. There was some opportunity to leave some of those trees, that mature hardwoods, a nice canopy that would have created some natural screening and buffering on the property, and those are gone now. So in their place, we're proposing some plantings and a condition that they beef up their landscape plan. That concludes the rezone. Moving on to one of 3 special exception variances. Again, this is one of the ordinances that can be granted a special exception variance, which is maximum lot coverage. This is going to cover both properties, 1025 and 1035 East Spring Street, which come out combined into 9.3 acres. This takes it that they would be both zoned B2, and that we would increase our maximum lot coverage from 60% to 61%. On a site this large, that actually translates out to about 4,000 square feet, so it's not a ton of space. It's less than 1/10 of an acre in terms of impact, so on a 9.3 acre site, that's not a huge deal. When you actually run the numbers out there on the actual square footage that they need, it's more like 400 square feet, but this would give them a little bit of flexibility if they get to final engineering to add or to add some impervious space out there. And impervious space is asphalt, it's concrete, it's roofs, it's buildings, it's anything that can absorb rainwater. So we have a maximum lot coverage of 60%, and that's in order to reduce stormwater impact, preserve some green space, make sure that we don't just pave over paradise. We find that in this case, this is a very, very small impact, relatively speaking. Ordinarily, we wouldn't support a huge increase in lot coverage, but in this case, because it's small, we find that there's no substantial detriment to the public good or injury to nearby property, and it's also not of a scale that it would impair the ordinance. So we're recommending approval as submitted. Special exception variance number 2, again, applying to both properties. It is to increase the maximum parking from 120% to 187% of the minimum required. There's going to be a little bit of math warning on this case. Hopefully you can follow along here. We've got parking spaces. So we have a requirement in our city that when you develop anything, you have to, except in our downtown, you have to provide a certain ratio of parking spaces to the square footage of the building typically, or in some cases like a church, the number of people that you would have in your assembly space. And that comes out to a particular number of spaces that you have to build by code. We are also a little bit unique in that we have a maximum allowed, which is just 120% of whatever that minimum is. So we allow a small bump over that. And that's, again, to prevent us from getting too much parking, which I already reviewed as to why that's damaging for cities. So in this case, we have a ratio of 1 to 6 spaces. So 1 space for every 6 people. That works out to about 192 spaces based on the capacity of their auditorium. They have 240 spaces out there right now. With the construction, they're adding this 14,000 square foot life or activity center, and they're also proposing this new 169 space parking lot, but that would leave them with 190 spaces on their existing site. And so they would lose some spaces off their existing site, but more than make up for them on their when you combine. So we have a requirement for 192. We have an existing number of 240. They're proposing 359, which is fairly large, and they're only allowed 230. So that's why they're here asking for an exception there. That works out to about 1 space per 6 people is our requirement. They've submitted some documents that from church planning and design documents that recommend you have 1 space per 2 or 2.5 people. We think that might be a little bit too much. They're requesting 1 to 3. So we recognize that 1 to 6 is probably not the right number out here, but 1 to 2 might not be the right number either. It's somewhere in the middle there. So we note that this probably would dilute some of the property values when you put big service parking lots out here. They do tend to lower the property values from a city standpoint, and that's why we're recommending those things about using the property throughout the week so that we can maximize the utility of that space, and then also add some additional landscaping to offset some of that parking and break it up a little bit visually when you go by there. We're recommending approval as submitted with this particular variance. Next variance is to reduce the front yard landscape buffer from 20 feet to 6 feet. So you can see some of their landscaping plan here. Those are going to be some trees and some bushes, and as well as some islands in the parking lot that are going to be planted. And the area in question is right here. You can see there's some plants that they've indicated are going to be there. And I've highlighted it here. Again, they would rather not lose the 13 parking spaces that are out there. Our ordinance would require you to have a 20-foot buffer along this area, and they are compliant out here, but not here. So they've only got 6 feet of space between the property line and the parking there, and so they're asking to reduce that landscape buffer just to keep it with the same distance that it is now and add some plants there. So right now it's grass, and they would put a landscaping plan with some trees and some bushes there. In exchange, they would like to keep the parking. So we find, again, this is not going to create a substantial detriment to the public. The buffer reduction is technically detrimental to some of the surrounding properties and the aesthetics. This is an important gateway, and so we want to have good aesthetics as you come into the city here. This is why we've proposed beefing up this buffer with some additional plantings as a condition. But we do note that a new buffer here would replace grass, and so buffer, a landscape buffer would be better than no buffer, and the additional plantings would help offset it. So we are comfortable with recommending approval out here with the understanding that we would recommend some additional plantings. Moving on to the hardship variance, which in this case, again, the hardship is I can't do it. The special exception is I'd rather not. In this case, the hardship variance is for relief from our limit of 42 feet of pavement depth between our frontage landscape and our facade. So that means essentially that you get 42 feet from the front of the property where you've got your landscaping and your right-of-way, and then you've got 42 feet to work with before you need to put a building there. In this case, we are way off of that. This was a former grocery store. It was built in the 90s. It was built long before our existing code was in place. And so it would be very difficult to comply with that 42 feet of frontage depth. So the application asks that the applicant basically prove that they have hardship out here, that they've got some kind of unique condition that justifies an exception. And we would agree that they have inherited this unique condition. One of the issues is that you can't create the problem yourself, and they have not. They inherited this when they bought the property, and furthermore, this property was like this before our code. So unlike the Quick Trip, where it was a new use and there was no pre-existing conditions out there to deal with, this is an example of having a pre-existing condition that is an obstacle to complying with the ordinance. We also note that on the rear here, ordinarily where we would want the parking on the side or the rear, there's just not enough space here. We have the highway here, which is not moving. There's no room there to add more parking. And this is somebody else's property here, and the highway just keeps going right here. So there's just not, you can see right here, you actually saw this case not too long ago with the HVAC contractor. So there's just no more room to put the parking where the code would prefer. And so there's just not that many options. The other option would be to move the building and pick it up and move it towards the front of the property. This is obviously would require like the complete demolition and reconstruction from scratch. So this would be extraordinarily costly. This would be definitely imposing a hardship on the applicant. And it would probably be so expensive that they would leave this property vacant and have to be forced to go find another property that would work for them. So ideally, we wouldn't have this large surface parking lot, and that's why our code prohibits it, but we would prefer to have a active building and this surface parking lot the way that it is, instead of having a vacant property. So in terms of the public good, we think that granting this variance is justified, and that's why we're recommending approval. Last one. Corridor design overlay, certificate of appropriateness, and this covers the entire property, both properties there. Zone B2, going to cover the entirety of the church expansion and the parking lot. So we have a 44,000 square foot existing main building there with the auditorium and associated spaces. They want to add a 14,000 square foot life and activity center here, so about 58,000 square feet of building. Their existing parking out there is 240 spaces, but they would want to propose 359, 190 on their existing site, and 169 on the site next door. Generally, we find this does meet the spirit of the corridor design overlay for an existing building. So this because it was the former grocery store and it was built before the existing code, it doesn't really meet any of the corridor design expectations that we would have on a new build, but it's good enough to meet what we would expect on an existing condition out there. There's only so much you can do to make it better, and they're doing enough of that. However, we do have a recommendation, as we've said in some of these other cases, that we have additional trees and landscaping. We can see that there was a lot of trees on this property next door. Those have since been cleared. We would argue we lost some trees that should have been preserved. We'd lost some buffering that should have been preserved. And so we have a condition here that's going to recommend beefing that up. This is what the church expansion would look like. This is the Life Activity Center. So this is the front. And this is going to be the side as you're facing towards the highway, I believe. We are recommending approval, although we note that, like the other COA, this is going to have to be tabled until that rezone and the variances are approved or dealt with by council. So technically, you're not taking action on this one tonight, but we do feel like it is in an approvable state, although we have these conditions here to add some sidewalks, and then the condition to prevent accessory buildings in the front yard, the landscaping, and then everything else is going to be trees and landscaping. So those are all laid out in your staff report if you want to see them in more detail. And that, at last, concludes the staff report.
You're out of breath. Oh.
It was a lot.
That's a lot. Do we have any comment from the church?
I'm Tommy Fountain, pastor at 1025 Church. Been in Monroe since 2013. When we began our church, we had 113 folks, and God has blessed us with about 2,400 now. And so it's just been a great journey, and we have been in this room oftentimes with city council, never in this setting. So we thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us to approach you. Nick Chambers is our executive pastor. He's also a construction guy. He's an electrician. With us, too, we have Tim Stewart, who's a construction guy. Also, our campus pastor at our second campus in Statham, JoJo Leach, is with us, and then my ministry assistant, Don Parker, who worked for PPI for a long time. But anyway, I do need to have some clarification and just like to share some things with you that may can help. And I'm going to let Nick share some of that, and we may combine together. I've spoken to thousands, and I'm more nervous tonight than I am when I'm in the pulpit. So just know that, because I have such a heart for Monroe. If you don't know anything about our church, we are in the community. We're in every public school in the Monroe cluster. We are in the projects and the housing authorities. Nick just got out of jail. He was doing ministry in the jail. And so our heart is in Monroe. And so the reason for the purchase of this property was where we were located. We outgrew it. We actually moved to the old DFAX building, which now the county owns. And we were there for months until we finished this. This was an old Piggly Wiggly or a Bi-Lo. Just to give you a little history of that, I started work when I was 12 years old in a Piggly Wiggly. When my wife and I died and I got married, I managed a Piggly Wiggly. Lo and behold, my boys, who are both preachers, say, "Pops, you're going to die in a Piggly Wiggly." And so we are grateful that we were able to not only purchase that for only $600,000. The value is a lot more than that now. And if you could remember where we were to where that property is now. And we were able to do that because we demoed that building ourselves. We demoed it ourselves, and then we put it back together ourselves with folks who were project managers and construction people, and that's how we did that facility. So we're honored to be there. And the purpose of us purchasing the other property, different than a business, we're a church. We have multiple services. We can't have just 1-to-6 ratio. It would never work. We would have to relocate. We don't want to relocate. Our goal is to put campuses in other areas, and we put young pastors like JoJo Leach there to pastor and to preach. We want to stay in Monroe. And so this is vital for us. When that property got open, and they started talking about selling it, we prayed and said, "Lord, give us that property." And there were two reasons. Number one, church growth. Number two, so we could have visibility off of Highway 78. And number three, really, so we could make that area look better coming into Monroe. Now, if you know this area, if you remember what it looked like prior to 2018, when I first told our folks that I thought God gave us a vision to buy that old Piggly Wiggly, it was awful in that area. It was bad. Since we've moved in, everything around us has cleaned up. Even Popeyes has cleaned up. Everything around us. We now have the old National Bank. Go by there and look at it. It's nice. The city bought the area up there where the police station is now. And there's a lot, and I've got the plans for that, of what's going to take place there from Mr. Draper. And so we're excited about this area. And so we just need some clarification and just to be able to share with you some of our heart, why that, 1 for 6 doesn't work. By the way, that 1 for 2 or 1 for 2.5 was back in 2001 or 3 when we had an organization called Lifeway that had all of those statistics for us. This is now 2026. Nobody rides to church together. We have too many multiple services where people are serving in other areas. So really what they're recommending now from the North American Mission Board is 1.5. Now, I'm okay with what you've given us, but they really are recommending now 1.5. My wife and I never ride together. Nick and his wife never ride together because we get there early. They come later. And so with the extra parking, which I'm grateful that we're able to do that, but I just needed to kind of clarify why we want to do what we're doing. We really want to have impact and influence in the city of Monroe and help our schools and help our projects and help all the things that we can to make a difference. Now, that's where my heart is. That's where our heart is. And that's why God's blessed us. Now, that may not make much sense when you put the pencil to it, but I can't put the pencil to it. I have to live by faith and trust God for what he's doing in changing lives in our area. So we have a couple of concerns. One is about the rezone and just some clarification. And then the last part about it as well. Thank y'all for approving the other. And I'll let Nick address the other.
I'm Nick Chambers. When you were talking about us using our property for other things, I agree with you 100%. Throughout the years that we've been there, we have allowed civic organizations to come in, like the Chamber of Commerce, and utilize our worship center for their meetings. The city has used our facility for mass casualty and active shooter training. The county as a whole did a massive training there. We try to open up. So we are trying to take that into account. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up and see how we could work through this. So the 6-foot sidewalk that's proposed along the Hammond Drive frontage for us, we've got some pictures. I don't know if you guys have been by there and seen. On the top side of our top entrance is Hammond Drive. There's a guardrail there, and there's about this much room between that guardrail and the road. Without cutting down trees and building retaining walls and removing everything, I would say that sidewalk is just impossible to put in. We actually constructed almost a creek catch-all because the runoff from the city's parking lot was eating away at our bank, and we spent a bunch of money to try and stop that. So I would ask that you guys consider that. Let's see. On our proposed plan, where we are in a unique setting. Our building cannot change. The property is what it is. We've got a retention pond in the back, and as we try to expand, where we've got the Family Life Center that you see on your, let's see, does the green button point the laser? Is that it?
Yes, it does.
All right. Right here, right now, we have our buses parked under a canopy, metal canopy, because the sun does more damage to a bus or to those types of things, so we have it back there. Where we had proposed was putting it down here. Now, I read in here where that's in the front, so we can't do that. Could we propose moving that area right there back here and then constructing? We've got pictures of what I'm hoping to be the nice canopy that we can put over our buses that's not a metal building style canopy, something really nice, something that looks good from the road, would bring more appeal. The other one's in the back. I mean, it's a metal carport like you see people put over motorhomes at their home. So that's the one thing that we would ask for some help on that if possible, to just shift all of that back, because I think if we were to stick it right here, we can probably stay off of that buffer, but still be behind the front of the building. So it wouldn't be considered, I guess, hopefully not be considered front of the building. It would be more of the side. But as you can see, our property limits us so much. The last part, I was just reading point number 3, and this is on the COA. And it's talking about us putting 31 trees. And I think where it's talking about the 31 trees would be right here. We were hoping that could be green space. We're going to have a buffer there, and we are planting a bunch of trees around the perimeter and everything else. But I feel that 31 turns that into a forest and takes over where we could use it for green space for family picnics and different things like that. And we're asking for that to be, we're definitely going to pour out a bunch of money into this as trees that go around the property and everything else. We know that. But I just didn't know where that number came from when I was reading the code and all the variances, where that number would come from. So we're asking that to be forgiven as well, not to take away all that number, but to work with us in that, because we are, like right here, we have a retention pond right here. Right now, if you ride by there, it's the ugliest thing in Monroe. Okay? We're actually going to put it underground so that that can be one big green space now. We're doing as much as we can to try and make this place beautiful. And we're just asking for consideration on these things. So,
Can you summarize that?
sir?
Can you summarize, you said the condition on the Hammond sidewalk, the
For
canopy,
the buses.
canopy,
And the 31 trees.
Because we're going to still plant a ton of trees, but like I said, we
could
don't
turn
want to
31
turn
trees,
that
won't
into a forest right there, and we want to plant a bunch of trees, no doubt.
Well, no, and I'll be honest with you, the calculation I came up with 31 was based on math. So if you were to go plant a ton of trees, that was based on pure mathematics of then spread out with a mature healthy trees, spread out. 31 was based on them being 120 square feet apart with 60-foot crowns. So if you were to plant mature deciduous trees that grow healthy in this area, that whole area could support 31 trees.
Well, what we're asking for is to allow us to construct our buffer and plant trees along the buffer, but to leave that area open for greenery, for family picnics, for our kids to go out there and play games on Wednesday nights and have a green space to play. If we plant all of those trees right there, and like I said, we're not trying to get away from, we're going to still load this place up with greenery and trees. But we're asking for some help in us trying to get our mission accomplished while making it pretty and everything. I mean, if you see what we've done so far on that side, we don't want it to be ugly. We want it to be pretty. We're just asking for a little bit of help. So,
I can speak to the accessory part, I mean, because you do, we know that the front of the building has got you hampered in. So, yeah, I think just because we're looking at a conceptual plan, if you push the bus parking in line with the front of the building as much as you can, I know that pushes your pavilion thing around and also messes with your pavilion thing there. You may be having to group some of that stuff together or kind of push it around a little bit, just because your front setback lines push you all the way into the back of the property. Yeah, I mean, that way you can get your bus parking out there. I mean, you and I talked about this before too, when you originally proposed this, but if that helps you with the bus thing, that way you're compliant with code. We don't have to do any more variances, because I don't want to make you guys have to come back if you can't help.
there's a path to work,
Yeah.
to have that condition
Absolutely.
still there, but to comply.
Absolutely.
Move some things around.
So let's say, so then we're talking about condition 3 with this 31 trees. I mean, and part of that in the last sentence, it says, "The landscape plan shall be submitted along with the site development plans for the parking lot expansion reflecting compliance with this condition and shall be subject to the approval of myself." So, what you're asking to do is reduce the number of 31 to, you didn't have a number in mind.
No, sir, I didn't, I wouldn't even,
And I really did. I sat down and plotted out, what would that take to fill that area with trees, because you know how I feel about the trees that were removed. So, because we felt like that those could have been retained, right? So that was really my thinking on that was, hey, I thought we were going to plant those trees back. I was just going by what I was reading and what was proposed was there were going to be trees planted back. So I didn't have a landscape plan other than what I had proposed in front of me. That area was just shown as just nothing. Like there's no activities planned for that area. There's nothing shown except for that little pavilion square there. So I didn't know that there was going to be things like passive things planned there. So I was like, well, let's load her up with trees. So I'm okay with striking everything except the last sentence in that condition. That way I can see a landscape plan.
yes, sir. Oh, we would definitely.
That way we get rid of the 31. I mean, because I still need to see a landscape plan. Because we've asked them to beef up the buffer, okay. We do need the buffer beefed up because I don't have any plantings shown on this plan. And that's a typical condition we ask of a certificate of appropriateness of most applicants that are before you that do require approval. And so we're already asking them to go through an administrative approval by us, and we would review that at the administrative level. They've shown basically a buffer plan on the front. We need that repeated, and that's what we've asked to do in the condition here, is repeat that along 78 and along the neighboring property. So, propose something in that area. So when you say tons of trees, is it going to be decorative, something to complement your activities out there, your passive activities? That way we can see what's going on. Yes, sir. So just that way we can have a landscape plan that's conditioned. That way we know you're going to do something. That way I'm not like hanging 31 deciduous trees on top of your head there. As a forest, as you said, Nick, it would be kind of shady over there.
Well, the negative thing about our property, we do not have place for kids to play even now, and when we do this, definitely, and so that will give us some space there for Wednesday night activities. And we are more than a Sunday ministry. Our Wednesday nights, the place is packed. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just packed. And there is one other thing I need to mention to you on this area, and I'm not sure if it comes at the very end, appropriation or not, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. When you counted the parking spaces initially, if I'm not mistaken, let me make sure I got my figures right here. When we first counted, you counted 240 based upon the ALTA survey, ALTA, which dated back to 2001. When we did this space, now with losing spaces, et cetera, there's actually more spaces than the 240 that refer to in the ALTA survey. Based on the current stripes parking spaces, there's 268 existing parking spaces. And then when we take off the other for the Family Life Center, and I just want to make sure this is right, then there's 169 with 268, so it really gives us, just a clarification, 393 spaces total, even with taking off the other. So you can check back and look and see, and with the way that it's been striped, so we currently, and the only reason I'm mentioning that is I don't want to come back if we have 393 and somebody say, oh, y'all got 393 instead of 359, if that makes sense.
So that 359 number was based on counting up the spaces in the site plan that you had submitted. So that's where that number comes from. So I noted in the report that you had a different number in your table that was on that site plan, but I couldn't find all of those spaces based on just counting the ones that were shown striped on the site plan.
Where there's a discrepancy, you get that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page when it comes down to it. I don't want you to come over and go, oh, Tommy, y'all got more parking spaces than we said.
Right. Brad, how would you want to handle if we've got a layout there and we've counted based on our layout, but then we've also got a calculation that differs from that layout?
So I'm looking at the count here. Let me go So you're saying there's 360?
Yes, sir, I'm saying based upon our count and based upon,
Space?
yes, sir, right now, we have 268 spaces. On our strike parking right now, there are 268 spaces. And you're showing only 240, but when we redid that building in 2018, there are 268 parking spaces that exist there now. I mean, it's not,
So
you know,
that's not,
down.
that number,
We
that
just want to make
number's-
sure that
We're
we're
not
right.
adding spaces to
No,
our plan.
no,
We're
none at
making
all.
sure that the number that's already there
Right.
is correct.
so that number about the 200, that's not relevant to the regulation necessarily. Yeah, if you weren't changing anything, you'd get to keep it, but it's the 359 or versus the 393 number that would be the issue.
Difference that we're seeing is the calculation or the count of the existing spaces from the building as a original. Y'all have it different than what we actually have. So the plan wouldn't change on what we're proposing and asking with the new parking lot. We just want to make sure the math gets.
Yeah, and we would,
I understand.
yeah, and we will still lose the parking when we put the Family Life Center.
That's right.
Right. So what I counted on that plan was 190 spaces with your new construction. That would be what you would have on the 1025 parcel. And then you add that with the 169 on the new parking lot next door, and that's where I got 359, and that was counted off of just counting the site plan here. But then when you got that table up there in the corner, there was a 393 number up there, and I couldn't find 393 spaces on the.
We even have parking right there between us and AutoZone.
Yeah.
There's parking there.
Stephen was thorough in counting the spaces. He probably counted it more than once, by hand.
Oh, I'm not doubting that. I just want to make sure that
I'm not reading this in.
I just want to make sure, Stephen, that we're on the same.
Understood, yeah.
Nick, was there anything else?
I think that's it. It's 359 that's
We thank y'all.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for being patient with us.
Yeah, I think that's what
Any questions that y'all have for Nick?
I planned now. There's
Thank you, that's very ambitious.
Well, we love Monroe, and we want to see God do a great work here in our.
Right. I mean, I'm not gonna have a heart attack if 360 come in. I mean, typically, we do hold people to the fire on spaces when you're asking for a variance. So, you're saying there's 360.
I'm saying it's three.
You're saying that you're gonna end with 390.
Yeah, we're saying that with the existing that we have, plus what we're going to lose, plus what we're adding, our numbers calculate at 393. Now, if that's awful, it may be. I think we need to make sure, see what those numbers are. Yeah, we want to, we don't want to come back either.
This is coming from your engineer, so, I mean, this is coming straight from your engineer. That is a lot of spaces to be missing.
That's why I was scared. I'm like, where are we?
Where on this site do you think that those spaces were missed if you were to hand count this versus, I mean, forget the existing survey. I'm kind of lost myself because you are losing, how many spaces were you losing based on the Family Life Center? What was that number again? 359. That's right. That's what I heard. Okay.
Now, some of that may be on the side as we come around the building, on the back side of the building, and then on the side where the office space is as well. If you're looking at the building, our office spaces.
You're losing a lot. You're losing every space on that side of the building. It looks like a lot more than 40. You're losing every space on that side of the building. It looks like a lot more than 40. I'm looking at an aerial right now, and there's a lot more than 40 right there.
That we're losing.
Yeah.
When we go through with the Family Life Center, we will be, and it's gonna take a hit because our property is so jammed.
But can we check that and make sure? I mean, is that something we can do?
Yeah, we need to make sure we're clarify that before we cancel the meeting. Yeah, we can check that. That's a variance before the council takes action. We just need to make sure our numbers are right.
Right. Thank you, guys.
You know, so they're not taking final action. We just need to make sure our numbers.
We also looked at the sidewalk condition, and because there's a guardrail out there and a steep curve, we're okay if you choose not to move that forward. So it was a requirement of the ordinance, but given the topography out there, if you were to recommend and you just drop that one, that would be acceptable to staff.
Yeah, and part of the reason too is that Hammond
with the
itself
first
is
one, I
not on the
guess.
corridor design overlay.
The rezone.
Second reason too, Hammond itself is not on the corridor design overlay.
All right, so where are we starting the vote?
Rezone.
The rezone. Motion on that?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All approved?
Aye.
Okay.
Real fast, second.
Approve, second, or no.
Motion to
second.
approve.
Second.
I second it.
Second. Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
I can't hear you.
Next motion? Motion?
Next is the special exemption 4548, and that's motion to approve.
Second.
Second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Next is 4549, is that right?
Yes.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Vote?
Aye.
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 Next is 4550. Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And 4551. Motion to approve? Second?
Motion to approve.
Second.
In favor, aye?
Aye.
That's a mouthful of motions. Okay.
And then we have to do the table one.
Yeah, which one are we tabling here? 4552. No vote on that, but
Motion to table.
table that, 4552.
Yes.
All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Approve? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, very good.
I have Matthias and Parks. Okay. That's the table.
Just to clarify on the rezone, you did state with conditions, correct? On your motion? Did you have that with conditions?
Is that-
Number 8 on the agenda, the rezone.
You have approval on that?
Shauna did.
Approval with the conditions, yes.
Do we redo it?
Second. Yes.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Table the last one, we're good?
Yeah. Motion to adjourn?
One more thing here. We have something else? We have a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All
Second.
in favor, aye?
Aye.
I'm cross-eyed.
Have to go to the bathroom.